The Dominican Republic, originally called Santo Domingo, is redolent with history. Columbus landed here on his first trip, and here he built the first city in the New World. From this palace, Columbus's son Diego ruled the Western world. And from this very spot sailed the conquistadors, Ponce de Leon, Velasquez, Cortez, and Pizarro, pushing further west for further gold. But for the next 300 years, Santo Domingo became a forgotten backwash. Few spots on earth ever sank from greater grandeur to lower estate. The island's occupation forces included Spaniards and French, Haitians and British, pirates and pestilence, hurricanes and hate. And the United States Marines from 1916 to 1923. One of the products of the Marine occupation was a young Marine-trained officer named Trujillo. Cy Gittleman of Arizona, who met Trujillo as a young leatherneck, points up El Jefe's feelings about the Corps.
I want to tell you one thing, that he has never lost the pride of his having been associated with the Marine Corps. And he was just as proud of his uniform in those days as he is of the handsome uniforms he wears today.
By 1920, a resident American businessman, Edward Pauley, remembers how it used to be.
Well, we used to come over here occasionally on a jaunt, young men, and the Dominican Republic was far behind Haiti in those days. Far behind Haiti. And what's been done here has all been done because of one man. There's no question about it. I think everybody will agree to that.
The fact that there's only one party doesn't bother you?
Well, it has a point for discussion, but it works. The people are happy. You go out in the country and damn it, the people are happy.
Trujillo took over what he described as a nation of men without land and land without men. His people were and are a mixture. A little Indian, a lot black, some Spanish. Almost as vigorously as Haiti emphasizes its African origins, Dominicans call attention to their Indian and Spanish ancestors. The capital city is likely to puzzle a tourist who comes armed with headlines. He lands at a spanking new jet airport. He soon learns sugar is the Dominican Republic's most important product, more than 800,000 tons last year. And more Dominicans work in sugar fields and sugar mills, like this huge one at Hyena, than for any other enterprise except the government. He'll be shown the much publicized but idle fairgrounds, built to celebrate the 25th year of the Trujillo regime, a party to which the world was boisterously invited in 1955, but to which few came. But beneath its antiseptic exterior, Santo Domingo bubbles with its own kind of fun and game. Cockfighting is eminently legal. So is gambling, including a lottery every Sunday. But baseball is the national game, sandlot and professional. The chosen few play polo. And no one is allowed to forget the merengue was born on the island. The Debs dance to it, so do the folks in another part of town. And naturally, the most popular merengue celebrates the Generalissimo in song. There is television, and virtually everyone goes to the movies. The Generalissimo has done more to encourage the finer things in life than one might suspect. The Palace of Fine Arts houses a symphony orchestra, a dramatic group, a great deal of Dominican painting of varying quality, including those of a convicted leader of the latest revolutionary attempt, formerly a director of the museum. Trujillo boasts of a crash program to eliminate illiteracy, and free compulsory schooling at grade school levels at least is obviously no idle boast.
Alejandro el Grande.
Of course, the Generalissimo himself is number one on the primary educational agenda.
Generalísimo Trujillo.
Later, the bright ones, carefully screened, can go on to the oldest and yet one of the most modern universities in the Western Hemisphere. These very buildings house some of the most vehement of the rebels who now languish in prison. Most of the world was backing away from the Jewish refugee problem in 1939. But the Generalissimo opened his door, turned over free land in a seaside area called Sosua, and a Jewish colony has flourished there ever since. Sufferers under Hitler, paradoxically Trujillo's most enthusiastic boosters.
You lived under Hitler and know what a dictatorship can do. Isn't this fellow a dictator?
Who do you mean?
Mr. Trujillo.
Okay, let's take it the other way. He works for his people, and he has done a lot of for the people, and he is not a dictator in the sense of dictatorship. It's a kind of democracy, you know.
He didn't stop with Jews. Spanish settlers plow in the lovely Constanza Mountain Valley, and there are 2 settlements of Japanese, of which this family may be typical.
The most important qualities of Generalissimo is that he's very human. By that I mean he is a man who really gets intense when there is some trouble or problem with his friends or the people.
He's sentimental?
Very much so. Very sentimental.
Trujillo is easy to photograph. He's a familiar fixture at public functions. He's very accessible to visiting U.S. congressmen, to foreign businessmen with enticing propositions, and even occasionally to newspaper reporters. But no ruler has been more careful about exposing himself to that combination of sight and sound, TV. Arranging a television appearance for the Generalissimo was a 6-month merry-go report. Robert Johnson, his American intelligence analyst.
There is change. There always has to be change. You see, here is a people who are still not fighting for the status quo, but fighting for the better standard of living. And that's important to realize, because Americans tend to struggle for that status quo. In other words, I believe that if this country was further advanced along and was satisfied and had a full belly, had a TV set, that there would be a hell of a lot more ferment than there is now. But the idea that they would rather sweat than bleed is what governs society here. As for being an island, it is an island, and it's been a strong point in warding off all this infection. You also have a strong leader here. I don't have to tell you that. Whether or not any nation can remain isolated from a turbulent sea of violence like the Caribbean is another question.
First, last June, an ill-fated invasion attempt, by our standards of the comic opera variety. One Cuban-based plane landed here. 56 men, many Dominican-born, fought in these hills for a few weeks. Only a handful survived. This was the last man captured, the notorious Major Delio Ochoa. This man captured him. The peasants greeted the invaders with machetes, not open arms. 2 boatloads of men tried a sea landing at a beach near this one. There were no survivors. Since then, the country has been on constant military alert. Trujillo hastily reinforced his army, already large by Caribbean standards, to the tune of an estimated $50 million, hard cash he could ill afford. For at the same time, drought decimated the sugar, cocoa, rice, and coffee crops, even as world prices crumble. The once proud Dominican balance of exports over imports vanished. Construction projects have been halted. The knife of depression has begun to cut. This is Senator George Smathers, Democrat, Florida, who went to see Trujillo during the current crisis.
Do you think we should behave differently toward Trujillo than Castro?
Well, I would say that there is this big difference. First, the Trujillo government, while a dictatorship and a cruel, tough dictatorship, it's always been a government that has been friendly to the United States. Now, with respect to Castro's government has, from the very start, evidenced it did not care to work with the United States. Actually, it was anti-United States. The many, many statements and speeches which Castro and his ministers have made, which are all anti-United States.
Senator, what did Trujillo specifically tell you he would do to democratize the Dominican Republic?
He said he would have elections within the cities of the Dominican Republic within 15 months, that he would have elections nationwide within 2 years. He further agreed that none of the Trujillos would run after I had told him that if they did, no matter what the actual outcome was, people would get the idea it was not an honest election. He said none of them would run. On top of that, he stated that he would invite all the exiles who were out of the country to come back and participate, that they could have a multi-party election. On top of that, he agreed that the OAS or some similar international organization could come in and should come in to supervise the election.
But, Senator, isn't it true that although this was publicized all over the United States, none of this appeared in the Dominican press?
That's absolutely true. I didn't know it at the time, but they have not been printed. And I must say that sort of shook me up, because immediately after having this conversation with the Generalissimo, I went out and had a press conference at which there were in attendance a number of Dominican reporters. But my belief is, and it's been represented to me, that Trujillo is desirous of making this announcement at the opening of his own session of Congress in his own way, where he wants to make a very big deal and take a lot of fanfare along with it.
Trujillo had become chief of staff of the new National Army. The Marines had long since departed. With a reputation as a hard worker, smooth schemer, tough disciplinarian. He shed his first wife, married into a better family, moved into the arena of political plotting and intrigue. And in August 1930 was unanimously elected president. Significantly, all his original opponents either gave up their candidacy or their lives by election morning. The domain he years, Trujillo has become more controversial, has generated more headlines than any small nation ruler on earth. The unhappy pomp and circumstance is part of the show in Trujillo land. Not only because he enjoys it, but also because he thinks the people enjoy it. The wedding of his puppet president brother to the daughter of an old American Marine pal, Colonel Charles McLaughlin, had everything but a Marie Antoinette tossing cake to the crowd at the palace gates. But Trujillo's heirs have apparently inherited mostly those qualities that may make him ridiculous. Not a Dominican considers his sons could carry on. But the old man cannot be dismissed on the basis of a rather preposterous public image. Not even his enemies would say that. For example, in Puerto Rico, round of refusals, half-promises, and sudden alerts filtered down through layers of palace guards bent on shielding him from bullets on the one hand and criticism on the other. But one morning, the word came. Get set and ready to go at the legendary Trujillo Cattle Ranch, breeding station, and country retreat called Fundacion. Near his birthplace, Cristobal. The stern warning to make sure no strong lights flashed in the face of El Jefe was the only hint that this would be more than just another chance to see the great star shining in a different part of his sky. The benefactor was in a benevolent mood, and although interview is surely not the word for what followed, we were allowed to be present for a catch-as-catch-can performance, with Manuel de Moya supplying the English.
Can I take a moment to ask you just one or two questions about the future of the Dominican Republic and the whole Caribbean area?
Mientras aquí en el Caribe hayan dos bandoleros internacionales, Fidel Castro y Rómulo Betancourt, habrá inquietud y peligro en el Caribe.
His Excellency said that while here in the Caribbean there will subsist two individuals that are practically madmen like Betancourt and Fidel Castro, the Caribbean area will be in a very suspicious way.
Do you think any meeting at the Caribbean Summit would do anything to reduce tensions in the Caribbean?
La reunión de los del Caribe, no creo.
He doesn't believe that.
Fidel Castro es un loco.
Fidel Castro is a crazy man. He's a madman. He's just unreliable, really, in other words.
Y él dice que para que la revolución cubana triunfara tiene que conquistar Santo Domingo.
And Fidel Castro says that for the Cuban Revolution to be a complete success, it has to be destroying our government and our country.
No lo va a conquistar nunca.
And he'll never realize the dreams of him.
How about the economic progress of and the future of the Dominican Republic in 20, 25 years from now?
República Dominicana, que es un país pequeño, que en el año 30, cuando yo ascendí al poder, tenía un presupuesto de 9 millones, ahora lo tiene 150 millones.
His Excellency said that the
tal vez 200 millones.
His Excellency said that although the Dominican Republic is a very small little country, that when it became in power, there was have a budget, national budget of 7 million. Now we have a budget of 150, and probably, very sure, will go as high as 200.
Y que pagamos la deuda externa.
And we have paid the external debt, so we don't have any external debt.
Y ya dentro de 25 años yo habré desaparecido.
And naturally he expects, and we hope not, that within 25 years he'll be gone, at least from the political
líder.
scene, yes.
Y no creo que ellos, los dominicanos, quieran trabajar hacia atrás. Siempre de frente.
And he's sure and positive
no creo que sean tan pendejos para trabajar
he's sure that the Dominican people will not go back. That since this period of prosperity and hard working, they wouldn't go back, they go forward.
They will go forward.
Yes.
So consequently, the future of the Dominican Republic is very bright.
Do you think that we in the United States have been unfair in our attitudes toward the Dominican Republic in the press or other ways?
¿Cómo vamos, my friend?
Si usted considera que la actitud de los Estados Unidos, sobre todo en la cuestión de la prensa y la actitud del gobierno, ha sido desfavorable para nosotros.
Siempre.
Always.
Después de la muerte de Roosevelt, Cordejor, todos han sido enemigos nuestros.
Contrario, that after the death of President Roosevelt, as well as Secretary, everybody that have come into power in the United States have been our enemies.
Todos contrarios, todos.
Generalissimo, do you resent the word dictator?
No. Yo soy un trabajador. Y mi pueblo sabe eso.
His Excellency said that he doesn't resent that word whatsoever. Because what he is a hard-working man, and the people and our country, our citizens knows that he's a hard-working man. So consequently, what he's done is the benefit for the country.
Eso es dictador, una especulación de los enemigos.
This word of dictator is a speculation word created by his enemies.
Yes.
Generalissimo, can you imagine any circumstances in which the Dominican Republic would invade any other Caribbean country?
De aquí para allá, no, jamás.
From here
La Constitución Dominicana lo prohíbe.
From here to any country, impossible, because the first thing is this, our Constitution forbids that we do intervene in any foreign country.
Well, of all the things you've done in the last 30 years, Generalissimo, what are you proudest of?
Las obras que más me enorgullecen a mí son aquellas que favorecen a los pobres.
His accomplishments that make him more prouder are the ones that have been for the benefit of the poor classes.
Is he concerned about the threat of communism? Is it a real threat?
Es una amenaza real, pero no me preocupa a mí. Porque cada vez que se meten conmigo, los voy a batir y llevarán el polvo de la derrota aquí en Santo Domingo.
Actually, I say that nationally it is a threat for the Caribbean, but not for this country, because every
Morderán el
time,
polvo de la derrota aquí.
because if they ever dare to come here, they'll swallow the dust of the rout. I mean, they'll be routed and with the dust of disaster.
Yes.
What about American attitudes and behavior toward Latin American countries?
Yo no quiero meterme en la cuestión americana, es Norteamérica. Lo han hecho muy mal.
Essentially, he doesn't want to go any further in these affairs of because you have done a very bad job.
A fellow who owns the country, the cattle, and the cars gets used to owning the reporters. And if the questions begin to warm up a little, why bother with no comment? You just walk away. But later, while frolicking around his hacienda and petting his prize livestock, the benefactor sounded off in several directions, some of them interesting in light of future developments. Retirement. You'll know I've retired when you hear that I'm dead. The Cuban sugar quota. Unfair. The problems of his regime. There are no problems, economic problems here in our country now, whatsoever. The U.S. hasn't made a right move since Roosevelt and Hull left the scene. But neither expansive on-camera performances, nor reassurances in the press, nor denunciations of other Latin American figures could hide the fact that the tough little Caribbean Caesar was up against it as never before. At the moment these pictures were made, the bitter tea of revolution was brewing. Object? Get Trujillo. And from inside Trujillo's palace, Robert Johnson is realistic.
What do you think's going to happen here when the chief retires or if he should die? A lot of people have tried to answer that question and don't know the answer. Think you do?
No, I don't either.
No one knows.